When you realize that your mic wasn't on the whole time, so you have to redo the video again, let's try this again. I wish that I was on the writing team for this show because, oh my gosh, I mean, the idea for this show, I would have come up with at some point, and the fact that I didn't, I just kind of want to punch myself in the face. If anyone from the show is ever watching this, please let me be on your writing team because, oh my gosh, this show. Okay, so let's get into this. So the premise of this show revolves around this character, Malcolm Bright. And when he was a child, he realized that his father was a serial killer. His father was arrested and went to a psychiatric hospital. 20 years later, Malcolm is now a profiler for the NYPD. And he basically profiles people who are killers, criminals, whatever. He helps them figure out what gender, what race, what mental state they're in. And because he was basically raised by a serial killer as a child, he can get into the mind of a killer because he was raised by one. All that said, Malcolm is an interesting character. He has his issues, but for the most part, he is a somewhat good person. So Malcolm works for the NYPD, and basically throughout the first season, he helps them solve crimes, helps profile people, so on and so forth. As the killers go on, it becomes difficult sometimes for him to profile people, and that means that he has to visit his father, who he hasn't seen in 10 years. He used to visit him when he was a young adult, but then stopped, and now after 10 years he has to revisit his father and kind of ask for the help of a murderer who happens to be his father. So that was not the short version of the premise, but you get it. I love this show. This show is amazing, as you can tell, because I'm more excited than I was in my last video. Yay! This show is amazing. It's on Fox, and it's probably one of the few cable shows that I watch besides Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I highly recommend it. It is gritty, thrilling, dramatic, deals with serious topics of mental illness. It deals with murder, trauma, a lot of things. I think for the most part, the writers do a great job of handling all these things. So my favorite character is obviously Malcolm. He's absolutely adorable. I love him. I love the actor, Tom Payne. He's absolutely adorable, and I love him. And just like, look at him, look at his eyes, look at those eyes. I can't, oh my god. Anyway, we're not here to fangirl. Malcolm, basically, like I said before, his father is a serial killer. Dr. Whitley, famously known as the surgeon because he actually was a surgeon on top of being a secret serial killer. And Malcolm grew up with a interesting but very toxic relationship with his father, which they delve into throughout the show. And I don't want to spoil a lot of things for you guys, so this is mostly spoiler free. Malcolm deals with a lot of traumas and things which are further explained in the show. He deals with mental illness. He deals with just a lot of things. I feel like the show does a pretty good job of handling mental illness and with respect and a bit of positivity, but also showing negative aspects of it. And I think the writers overall do a good job of that, but I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. When it comes to Malcolm, I think it's very fascinating, but mostly frustrating how they show just how ignorant people can be, specifically sometimes when it comes to his team in the NYPD, specifically JT and Danny, especially JT, when it comes to the fact that they sooner or later do find out that he is the son of a serial killer, and they kind of treat him a little weird because they expect him to be sane, normal, stable, even though he was raised by a serial killer, which is just like, I don't know what did you expect him to be like? Like, you wanted him to be normal, like a normal, stable person, whatever that's supposed to mean. The dude was raised by a serial killer. You're lucky he's as sane as he is right now. Like, I'm not gonna get into that. But the point is, it's very fascinating, his interactions with his coworkers. My other favorite character, ironically, is his father, Dr. Whitley. I think he is absolutely hilarious, even though he is a narcissistic psychopath. For some reason, it's always the psychopaths in shows that have the best humor. Or maybe that's just my mentality. mental state.
Yikes.
I love Dr. Whitley. Michael Sheen does an amazing job of playing the character. He's absolutely charming, which is kind of part of a narcissistic's tendencies, is to be charming, which kind of lures people in. I still love the interactions that him and Tom Payne have on screen as Malcolm and Dr. Whitley. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I always look forward to every time that Malcolm walks into the psychiatric hospital to visit his father. So much fun. Love those scenes to death. I could eat them. Yum, yum, yum. My last favorite character is Danny. Like I said before, she's one of the co-workers and police officers. I personally feel like Malcolm and Danny should be together for life, and I am part of that stand. Don't come at me. I feel like the writers, though, are going to purposely stab me in the back and not make it so that's just a big fat ow. I love Danny. I think that she's a somewhat well-written character and a well-written female character in that she grew up in the Bronx and she dealt with her own traumas and issues, which they explore in the show. Again, trying not to spoil anything. And I think that even though she is tough exterior, on the inside she's very kind and even nurturing. And I think she, top of maybe Gil, who is like the leader of this group, I feel like she kind of comes to understand Malcolm more quickly than some of his other coworkers.
I also forgot to mention the medical examiner character Edrissa, which I am so sorry for forgetting because she is a gumdrop and has the cutest crush on Malcolm. Even though I'm still rooting for Malcolm and Danny to be together, I do find it adorable how awkward and flustered Edrissa gets around Malcolm. But anyway, she's a great character and I would protect her with my life. Back to the video.
Speaking of Gil, I think Gil is also a really good character. I think that he's an important juxtaposition with Malcolm's character and everything that he deals with his father. And I really do kind of cherish the relationship, and I'm very curious to see kind of how it develops in season 2, how everyone really kind of maybe develops in season 2. I'm trying not to spoil anything because maybe someone dies, maybe someone doesn't. I don't know. There are other characters like Malcolm's younger sister, Ainsley, and his mother, Jessica, who is basically a functioning alcoholic with her own issues and is very overprotective of Malcolm, even though Malcolm's in his 30s now, but she kind of treats him like a 5-year-old. So that's, but it still has an effect on Malcolm, you know, because like, yikes, Jessica, like, back down, Jessica. Like, everybody's complaining about Karens. They need to be complaining about Jessica's. Real quick, I wanted to just talk about mental illness. As you guys know by now, if you don't, hi, I'm Liz. I have a mental illness, anxiety and depression. It's fun. When it comes to mental illness, I'm very big on how it's represented in shows, in movies. As a writer, as someone who has a mental illness, I think it's very important for it to be represented, but it has to be represented properly. It's big, confusing feelings I feel about it being represented in media. I'll probably do a video about it this month at some point, just not in this video. This show, I think, properly represents mental illness with what Malcolm deals with his traumas again, which you'll find out in season 1. And most importantly, what I love about it is the fact that Malcolm, for the most part, at least at the beginning of the season, does take care of his mental health. He goes to therapy, although it's his child therapist, but it's still therapy. It's fine. He takes medication, he does mantras, he does yoga. He tries to take care of his mental health the best he can with what he has. And I think that's fantastic. I think that needs to be promoted more than other shows that promote not doing that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think it also properly shows, even with Dr. Whitley, they properly show what a narcissistic psychopath is like. It's not like a Hannibal Lecter type person. It's more different and it's a lot more charming, which is what makes it so dangerous. I think that's fabulous because it's true. I love the fact that they show negative aspects of not dealing with your mental health, because that's also important to show. Like certain films that may have came out last year, that was one of my favorites. This show does a really good job of respecting mental illness, and as long as it keeps doing that, I will support this show. And on top of its premise being fantastic and it being the tip of the iceberg of what they're trying to delve into in the series, which I think is fantastic, I'm all for it. This show does a really good job of representing mental illness, and I applaud the writers for doing it. There's not a lot of failure of it, and the failures I feel about it are mostly spoiler stuff, but I'll try to explain it without spoiling anything. Basically, there are some characters in the show that end up a certain way at the end of season 1. There's a kind of character development, but I don't see it as character development because I feel like there wasn't enough Easter eggs and groundwork or foreshadowing things like that to then kind of throw a curveball and say the character is this way now without there being seeds of building up to that explosive revelation. They might explain it in season 2. I hope they do, because as of right now, that is a somewhat important, but it's not game changing, but it is enough for me to start to question if the writers fully know what they're doing with the show that they have created. Like, do they really realize this amazing premise that they're doing and these characters that they're writing? But it's not a make or break for me just yet, but I hope they explain it soon in season 2. The potential and a lot of amazing things about the show is, like I said before, the premise and the very fact that there is more to this story than just the fact that Malcolm's father is a serial killer and Malcolm fights other killers, other criminals, even possibly copycats of his father. There's even more to this story than meets the eye, and I love that. I love stories that take things and they go even further with them, whether there's more to the backstories, there's a conspiracy, there's whatever, there's a secret organization, I don't care. The point is that they go deeper, and I love that, and I hope they keep doing that while staying true to Malcolm's character and his toxic relationship with his serial killer father. There's a lot of potential there. The way that this show is shot, I realized after rewatching it last night a little bit, is that the cinematography, the editing, the coloring, the darker tones helps this show really stick out. It really does. How it does flashbacks, it helps it stick out. Even some of the music kind of reminds me of the Sherlock BBC TV show, which is one of my favorites of all time. The music reminds me of that. This very uncomfortable, jarring sounding music at times, or very subtle but like unorthodox sounding music of violin screeching. Love it. Want more of it. I think overall this show has a lot of potential, but it also has a few things that I think they need to better explain before it retcons the whole thing and it just all disintegrates before my eyes. But for the most part, this show is I highly recommend it. You guys should watch it. If you are up gore, thrills, serial killers, Michael Sheen, Tom Payne is adorable, all of these other things. If you are up for any of those things, then you should watch this show.
There's so much more I can teach you about murder. Maybe we can solve a few together.
Goodbye, Dr. Whitley.
My boy.